Thanks for telling me.
And you don't have a card? I do. Next thing to do tomorrow, we can email me.
Okay. You come make an appointment.
Yes.
Thank you.
You guys ready? Here we go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your patience. My name is Dean Vallone. I'm the president of Lower Allen Township Board of Commissioners, and I'm calling this regular meeting of the Lower Allen Township Board of Commissioners of October 25th, 2021 to order. Proof of publication is available of this meeting. We begin our meetings with a prayer and a pledge of allegiance. Let's pray. We pray this day to give thanks for all the many blessings bestowed upon our township. Watch over us who are entrusted with the administration of this township. Create in us the earnest desire to serve faithfully and permit us to experience the joys of noble service completed for our residents. Encourage cooperation from those who are served and from those who serve. Help us to use every willing service and every effort put forth for good government. Heavenly Father, we ask your guidance to help us as commissioners to make the right decisions. We ask that you aid our staff as they perform the daily tasks of running our township, and we request that you be by our first responders as they protect our residents and see that they return home safe at the end of each day. In your name we pray, amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting was brought to order just after a public hearing that we conducted a little bit ago. I'll remind commissioners and staff that have microphones in front of them, we are live streaming, and therefore, if you'll make sure that your microphone is on when you are speaking, that would be helpful so that the people that are watching us via YouTube and the live stream, and then later on for the recording, if they choose to listen, can hear us clearly. Thank you. Commissioners, we received our meeting minutes from October 11th, 2021, and our meeting packets this past week. And if there's no comments, questions, or adjustments to those minutes, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the minutes from October 11th, 2021.
Mr. President, I would like to move that we approve the October 11, 2021 regular meeting minutes of the Lower Allen Township.
Second. I have a motion from Commissioner Shin. I have a second from Commissioner Kutz. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next on our agenda this evening, we have a presentation from John Minetto from the West Shore Recreation Commission. John, if you'll come up to the podium and let us know what you have for us.
Thank you very much for having me on the agenda here. I appreciate that very much, and I want to thank you for your commitment, loyalty, and support to the West Shore Rec. The West Shore Rec is now going on its 54th year. I've been involved with the Rec Board for 30 years, and it's a program that means for 54 years we're doing something right. So we unfortunately this year, with the pandemic of 2020, we had a lot of issues like everybody else did, and our restrictions with the red, yellow, and green really put us back somewhat, and we rely our revenue from registration, and 80% is what we're looking for, and unfortunately for 2020 we were very low. So moving forward, we have a program. We only have 4 staff members and 100 instructors that do all the work. They're the ones behind the scenes that we have programs for all individuals, all ages throughout the year, and the programs keep growing, and it's something that I really believe in, or else I wouldn't be standing in front of you trying to convince you to continue what you're doing. And I know that hopefully that you will continue, because it's a program that I firmly believe in. And to have all the work that's being done by the 4 individuals that we have, the staff members and the 100 instructors, just says something about the West Shore Rec and the commitment for the 6 municipalities that are involved with this West Shore Rec. Unfortunately, though, when we had our budget meeting in August, the middle of August, we had to look at the numbers, and the numbers, you know, you look at the numbers, they're black and white, they don't lie. So we had to raise the per capita from $2.50 to $3, and that's the first time we raised the per capita in 8 years. So with things going up with expenses and what have you, and with our registration being down as low as possible, even 2021, we had a low start in the beginning until people were starting to get more comfortable with the programs and with the COVID and what have you. So we're starting to see an increase in the registration, which is good news. And we're just trying to move forward what we're doing, and we're just going to continue, because the people behind the seats get all the credit in the world. I'm just here to just say thank you for what all you do. Thank you for letting us use your facilities. And also, I want to, I just want to make a comment that what we had to do, as far as the rec board, we had to reduce some expenses by cutting back on tech support. We had to cut back on reduced coverage for the staff members, and also we had to cut back on liabilities, and also on the computers that we're going to replace the 7-year-old computers and try to upgrade the 2 servers. That's been on hold now, so hopefully in 2022 that we'll be able to make that adjustment and move forward and what have you. And I just want to say thank you for your representative, Mr. Black, who's there continuously, and also the alternate, her name is Beth Ann McCoy, who's been showing up at the meetings, which we really appreciate that. Mr. Black gives us an overview of what's going on in Lower Allen, and it's really tremendous to hear from Mr. Black. And you guys have a great representative to represent the Lower Allen for the West Shore Rec. And I just want to really say thank you again for your support, your commitment, and loyalty to the West Shore Rec. And we all appreciate it, and hopefully moving forward that we can make things hopefully much better, which I think we are. The needle looks like it's moving in that direction. So again, thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. If not, you can give them to Mr. Black, and Mr. Black, I'm sure, will relay them to me, and I will try to get the answers for you. So,
Well, thank you very much for everything you do. As a commissioner here in Lower Allen Township representing our residents, we're always trying to look for ways to add value and find value. And I can't say enough for what the West Shore Recreation Association does that does both of those things. And so thank you very much for your continued support in keeping the association strong and offering those services and those programs to our residents as well as the other municipalities in the area. So thank you very much.
Appreciate that very much, President. Yes.
Commissioners, any other comments or questions?
I just want to thank John for the very kind comments, and I want to second what you said, John, about our staff. They're wonderful people,
Right.
and they have come through this pandemic, and now we're seeing the numbers increasing, which is wonderful.
Yeah. The last thing I want to say about our staff, we are blessed to have the staff that we have had. I think Todd and Eric's been there for like 27, 28 years. And the 2 other ladies, I think, been there 15, 16 years. And we are truly blessed to have people like that really are committed to the West Shore Rec, and also also the volunteers, and also the instructors. That it's very difficult to get instructors anymore because prices keep going up, and we count our blessings that we're able to get all the instructors that we can get. And again, I appreciate your comments. And again, thank you, Mr. Black and President. I appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you.
Good job, John.
Thank you. I would like to reiterate my thanks for your patience here with us this evening. We're moving right along in our agenda. There's a presentation. It's the Facilities and Response Study, and this presentation will be led by Scott Rhino and Jesse Suiters. They were tasked with the job of doing the Facilities and Response Study for the Public Safety Department. And I'm sure this will be very good information for not only us commissioners and staff, but for the public that's joining us both in person and online. So Scott, when you're ready, you go ahead and start your presentation.
Okay. Need 1 minute here to hook up the PowerPoint, and Captain Works handing out paper copies there.
It is Halloween, you know.
Tried to trick us here this evening, left the lens cap on the projector, but good now. So while he's bringing that up and passing out final presentations there, as we get to what I would consider kind of the second half of the presentation, there are 8 different maps included. The folks that have books will have those. Those snapshots will be on the screen, but they will be hard to read. There are extra copies of the maps only that are paper clipped in the order they will be in the presentation. So if anyone would like those maps to be able to follow along at that point, you're welcome to those. Like I said, they are paper clipped in the order they will be reviewed in the presentation.
It might come. Okay. Here she comes. Yeah. Is that all right? Okay.
They're the same ones that are in here.
It's the same map packet that's in your presentation. They are fold-out maps in the presentation.
It should be good. I don't know what's going on.
Okay. I believe everybody has everything they have now. So good evening, everyone. Commissioners, staff, community, thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. As Commissioner Chairman indicated, this is a culmination of a project that we've been working on now for a number of months related to the fire and EMS facilities. So my name is Scott Rhino. A little bit there about me in the screen. It's 37 years in fire and EMS. I've done both career and volunteer. Back today as a volunteer fire chief after a 4-year hiatus. I live in Lancaster County, and I also work as a part-time career battalion chief. Previously spent a number of years in EMS management. So I now travel around the state doing these types of projects. So this particular project here, the things that we were looking at are included there in your book. Basically, it relates to the stations. We were also encompassing that with ISO recommendations, and we were also looking at apparatus replacement plans. So lots of thanks to a number of individuals. Again, I do this work at this point in a number of places across the Commonwealth, and I get all levels of cooperation. I get all levels of information presented to me. I still today go to some areas where I say things like, I need your call volume and I need your current inventory of apparatus, and I get answers like, we'll compile that, we'll try to get that for you. Here in Lower Allen Township, your public safety team, from your volunteer fire chiefs and leadership to the career fire and EMS captain to Director Hall, the cooperation here has been great. Everything and anything I needed was readily available. Didn't have to get created, it was already there. So that has been of great assistance in this project to lead us to where we are today. So subsequently then, what also ended up happening is we realized that the township already had Jesse on staff through Daywood to do other projects and items for the township. And we brought Jesse into this project from a data management standpoint to help us create maps and pinpoint that data. And that was a phenomenal addition. That certainly assisted this project greatly and allowed us to pinpoint the data, which Jesse will discuss when we get to some of the mapping here. So this really ended up being a data-driven project, which obviously makes for a better end result. So appreciate Jesse's involvement with that. Okay, so I reviewed kind of the 5 key elements for the project. Now we got our PowerPoint caught up here. So we're reviewing each of the stations, recommendations there, also looking at the ISO and how that plays in, recommendations for the stations in the next 5 to 10 years, determine if a new station location is necessary based on the data and things that we're seeing, and then look at the apparatus complement that's there today, as well as moving forward. So that's what this project involved. So as we look at the individual stations, you have obviously the pictures there in your book. We all, what we call Station 1 is the facility here that we would be at. Obviously that's a shared facility with the township. The PSOs, your career staff, are currently located from this facility. At present, all EMS resources are deployed from this facility. Your Station 2 location and your Station 24 location do not have EMS resources at those locations. And your career fire and EMS captains are located out of this station. This station does have live-in quarters for volunteers. So that's the overview of the current Station 1 location. The current Station 2, what we would consider Station 2, which is located at 800 Roop Avenue. Today, that facility is a functional facility. However, upgrades are needed. It's an older facility. It was built in 1982. Additional apparatus bays were added in 1998. So it's an older station. No career staff are deployed from there at this time on a regular basis. So that's staffed by volunteers. No EMS resources are currently housed or deployed from that location on a normal basis. Geographically, though, this station location provides great value to the township from a response time, which plays into an ISO rating, okay? We'll talk about that a little bit further here when we get to that, and the maps that Jesse is going to show you will kind of reiterate that, all right? What I'm talking about there is currently the way the resources are deployed, first and foremost being EMS, you're going to see that having EMS located all at this station versus putting some EMS resources at Station 2, you would get a lot better coverage of the overall township if you had EMS resources at the Station 2 location, okay? And the mapping will show you how that plays out. So Station 24, the Lizburn station at 1800 Main Street. Again, an older station, space is very limited in the current station. A lot of property there, so there's plenty of room for expansion at the property, but the station itself, again, I travel to a lot of firehouses across the Commonwealth, and when I was there with the chief, I think I said it's about the tightest firehouse in space I think I've ever been in. Kudos to them. They have utilized, I think, every inch of available space in that firehouse, okay? But the reality is there simply isn't enough space. From everything from the fire trucks, literally just fit. Can't walk around them. There's not adequate space for storage. There's not adequate space to do a number of things that need to be done. Location staffed entirely by volunteers. No EMS resources housed at that station. There are additional buildings on the property that are primarily used for fundraising. So that's the overview of the current Station 24. Things that we went through to give you an idea of how we came to what we're discussing tonight. There were a number of individual meetings at all the different station locations. There were individual meetings, there were group meetings. The main planning team consisted of myself, the career fire and EMS captain, Dave is the public safety director, came in and out of that. The volunteer chiefs come in and out of that. We had lots of different meetings. I spent an afternoon taking a driving tour of the township with the career captains, looking at the entire township. We were in all the facilities, reviewed the current ISO report. We had an evening meeting here at this facility with the automatic and mutual aid partners. That means the other neighboring fire companies that would respond to assist Lower Allen Township in the event of a structure fire related incident. We met with those folks. We had a meeting with the Public Safety Ad Hoc Committee to review all this before we finalized it and brought it here this evening. And as I mentioned early on in the process, Jesse joined us, and he's been entwined and involved in most all that process as well. So that's how we went about where we're at here this evening. So Station 1 recommendations, again, keep in mind Station 1 is what we would consider here. Again, this is a fairly new facility. So the needs here are less, but consider renovating the existing kitchen and expand it, review those appliance needs. The kitchen facilities are small and space compromised on a normal day. Storage space is of a premium for fire and EMS. The existing lounge, I would consider reconfiguring that and expanding the current lounge facility. Bathroom facilities are adequate in the overall facility. However, in the Bay Area, there would be value in adding a bathroom facility there. Obviously, time is of the essence when you're coming and going to calls, so having to go a greater distance for those facilities could be a negative. There is a negative pressure room, which in things like the pandemic world that we're all living in right now, those types of things become more and more important. So that should be reviewed for its functionality. and the current bunk room facilities moving forward, if there's going to be a continued live-in program and expansion of that, consider some upgrades and look at that. So that's the Station 1 recommendations. Station 2 recommendations, as I indicated, that is currently an older, somewhat outdated facility. However, it's going to play a key role when you see the response and call volume data here in a few minutes. That facility, in terms of its location, plays a key role, and obviously you already own it and it's already there. So the recommendation is to seek professional engineering assistance to analyze that. There's the possibility of adding a second floor there. In reviewing that facility when we went through it, I understand it was built with that consideration at the time. Review and determine the functionality of all the mechanical and structural systems. Again, it's 20-plus-year-old facility, and the need to look at the interior floor plan. If the township's going to consider moving EMS resources to that facility, which again you'll see from an operational standpoint, from a call volume and resource management standpoint, that probably makes a lot of sense. But if you're going to do that, then there's going to be some upgrades and needs at that facility. Okay. Now, keep in mind, one of the things that you're not seeing here when you think about renovations and facilities, we are not at this point recommending building a new facility. And again, the data that Jesse's going to show here shortly will essentially show you why that is. So we believe at present the stations that we have, with the proper renovations and operational deployment of the resources, can cover the township without building a completely new facility. So obviously renovation costs, you would think, are going to be less expensive than building a completely new facility. Station 24, the biggest thing that is going to need to be further analyzed and considered there is, number one, new facility versus renovations. Okay, the thought process would be up front, the amount of renovations that are going to be needed at that facility, and the fact that it is completely space cramped already. The reality is you're probably going to be far better off building a new facility at Station 24. However, the challenge then becomes, which is shown on the upcoming maps, if you were going to build a new facility, does it make sense to build it at the existing location? Now, the land is there, so that's all there. However, from a call volume response district, they're on a far outreach portion currently of the township. So if they were moved in terms of location, it would assist the overall coverage footprint of the township. For discussion purposes, the maps you're going to see, that's illustrated on the maps as the possibility of moving the current Station 24 location to the area of the township park. Okay, that's not a firm recommendation. That's open for discussion, that if Station 24 is going to be built a new facility, would it make more sense to consider moving it versus building at the current location? And you'll see on the maps from a coverage standpoint why that's a consideration. Okay, so again, the challenges that Station 24 currently faces: apparatus bay doors need to be larger. There's a significant need for more space. Bathroom facilities are needed. Office space is needed. No live-in bunk quarters. So there's a lot of challenges at the existing facility that would need to be addressed. When we talk about apparatus plans, we've looked at all that. things that have to be considered there is station location and size of the apparatus versus the facility. So as an example, if for some reason today the township said, we're gonna buy a ladder truck to house at Station 24, well, that's gonna have to sit in the parking lot because that won't fit in the current apparatus bays, okay? So, apparatus size versus the facility. But the big thing that has to be considered on any apparatus plan is staffing, okay? It's a known fact in the Commonwealth and beyond the Commonwealth that volunteerism is on the decline, okay? We do not have today the volunteer staff that we used to have. Nobody does. Lower Allen's no exception to that, all right? Now, there's various things that can be done to try to maintain that. However, you have to be realists that you can buy fire trucks, you can buy facilities, but if there's no staff to get them out the door, obviously that doesn't make sense, okay? So as you look at replacement vehicles, staffing has to be a big consideration. Can the volunteers staff it? If the volunteers can't, what's the staffing plan, okay? Some things in that, which is already in the current apparatus plan, consider multitasking. Engine rescues, quints, things like that, where a vehicle can do more than one function. And that's already in the current apparatus plan. But we need to also be real as we stand here today in the year 2021, the cost of fire trucks continue to climb, okay? It can easily run $600,000 plus for an engine. An aerial device, depending on what you're buying, is $1.2 to $1.5 million, okay? So the cost of apparatus is definitely expensive. So that's the current plan that we've looked at. And then apparatus recommendations. Current apparatus plans well thought out and adequate based on the call volume numbers, staffing, and facilities. Again, I will give that credit to your existing leadership. I believe the plan you have in place is good. However, times continue to change. Call volume continues to change. The response district continues to change. So moving forward, there's going to be a need to review and determine a staffing model, okay? So, for instance, if we're going to put if we're going to keep fire trucks at Station 2 location, replace fire trucks at that location, that's staffed by volunteers. Is there adequate volunteers to do that? If there is not, what's the plan, okay? So, outside of money, because fire trucks are expensive, outside of money, buying fire trucks is easy. Once you have the fire truck, staffing it is the hard part, okay? So, revisit the apparatus replacement plan once the overall facility plan's adopted. And one of the recommendations at the end is the township's going to need to consider undertaking some type of staffing plan for the future that encompasses what can the volunteers continue to do, what can the PSO program continue to do, what does the future look like, okay? So that's the apparatus. So we're going to get into the mapping now, and in front of each map, there's just a couple of notes of what you're going to look at on the map. Jesse's going to explain those. So this first particular map shows the density, what we call a heat map. That's simply the calls, okay? And Jesse will explain how he mapped those. The current fire station locations are indicated by a red dot. That's going to be the same on every map. You will see, which Jesse will explain, again, Station 24 possible relocation is just shown on there for visual so you understand what it possibly could do. Call volume is statistically has changed minimally in a 10-year period. other than the 2019 COVID year, we saw some very ups and downs, spikes there. So each map will have a couple of bullet points here in front of it, and then we'll go to the map, and Jesse will further explain what you're looking at on the map.
All right, and so just to clarify, the data that we received for the calls was from Cumberland County's dispatch system. And so in that, the data had to be standardized, it had to be cleaned, and then it had to be plotted. The data points didn't come with a X and Y or a latitude and longitude, so we had to use the addresses for those calls to get them on a map using what's called reverse geocoding. So the first map, and this is small on the screen here, but you have a 2010, 2020 density comparison. The 3 red dots represent station 1 and 2 up in the upper portion of the map, and at the bottom to the far right and lower is the current station 24, and to the left and up a little bit is a potential station 24 relocation. As you can see in the heat map, and on the screen here it's a little hard to tell, in 2010 you had these areas of density. Some of them were warm, some of them were hot. The main difference is that those same areas of density kind of intensified in 2020. We don't see any radical shifts of density or location of densities. We just kind of see an increasing of density in those areas. So you're seeing a stability in terms of displacement of calls, but an intensification in terms of volume of call. So the next map we're going to look at is fire specific, so excluding EMS, and it's called volume by box. And a box is essentially a response area that when a call happens in a box, a geographic area on a map, certain units are dispatched to it. So this is going to be fire call by volume by box. It's broken down into the areas by the 911 system. The red dot again indicates fire stations. And the box numbers correlate to the call volume. We'll see that here in a moment. So again, up here, hard to see. If you have the paper in front of you, it's a little easier. But what you're seeing here are the boxes to the far west and the upper east corner are your 2 highest volume boxes. Box 1203, which is in the upper left-hand corner of the map, has 1,044 calls. That would be helpful, yeah. And this box over here, which is box 1208, has 743. I'm sorry? 03 is up right. Oh, okay. 03 has 10,000 calls. 1,044 calls, and 08 has 743. Ems Call Heat Map 2016 to 2019. So it's going to show you something similar to what the fire call showed. So again, what you see is areas of density on the map, and really for the EMS calls, it just remains very consistent from 2016 to 2019. So the red areas are higher volume, the blue areas are lower volume. So you're not seeing a tremendous amount of change between the two. This data set, this is basically, Captain, correct me if I'm wrong, this is what was generally available with the information needed through the 911 system.
Jesse, can I ask you a question quick?
Yes, sir.
Just going back to your box map,
Yeah.
I see date says 9/14/2021 on it. So is that year to date, or I don't see a start date for?
No. So this is for the entire. I think it was 2010 to 2021. That's the date the map was made.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. EMS call volume by box. So again, it's going to be a box breakdown of calls. So generally, very similar, except in this case, box 1208, which is, I don't want to get it wrong again, it's this one right here, has 3,558 calls for that 2016-2019 time frame. And box 1203, which is right there, has 2,704. So a fairly substantial difference east to west in that situation. Your next highest boxes are in your commercial area, Beacon Hill, and the Arcona area, as well as down around Station 4. So here's where we're kind of getting the meat and potatoes. So that just kind of shows you a distribution of calls. So suffice it to say, the calls are distributed in their hotspots. That distribution over time hasn't really changed. It's just where the calls are occurring, we're having more calls. It's not that we're all of a sudden having more calls in areas we never expected it. Okay, so we see some consistency. So then the question becomes, okay, we have increasing numbers. How do we respond to those, or what does our response look like from station to station to station? And are we hitting those areas that are having high volumes? And so that's what we're going to get into here. So based on consultation with Scott and the various staff at Lower Allen Township, 4, 6, 8, and 10-minute drive times were chosen. It kind of represents a life-saving range, you know, best case to kind of the worst case life-saving range scenario. 4 to 10 minutes, as you see here, relates to the standard care for EMS units. So from Station 1 alone, there are areas in the township that are outside the 10-minute drive time, which is not great. And the stations, again, are indicated by the red dot. So just jump to the map here. It's a little easier to explain. So this red dot right here is Station 1. This map, the entirety of this map, represents drive times from this station. Areas in green are areas that a responding unit during an average traffic day at the posted speed limit is going to be able to get to in 4 minutes. So green, 4 minutes. The orange area represent that 6-minute time frame on an average day of traffic at a posted speed limit where they would be able to respond to within 6 minutes. This is barring your worst case scenarios, roads being closed, flooding. This is very much a standard average day. It's an average across 24 hours. I should be specific about that. So red is 10 minutes, and areas with no color, you're not getting to within 10 minutes. So that's Station 1. That is this station right here at the top.
Jesse, if I could interrupt one
Yes,
more
sir.
time, I apologize.
Yes, sir.
Just to clarify, so this is drive time, not response time. Do you have data on response time or approximately what it would add to each, which is it takes X minutes on average to get personnel loaded into the apparatus and on the road?
So we do have, there is data on the amount of time between, well, there is data for EMS, not for fire, on the amount of time that there is between a call being dispatched, an apparatus getting out the doors, and an apparatus getting to the scene, reporting on scene for EMS. So an ambulance station receives the call, they get out the door, they get to the call. But for fire, we don't have that data.
And the difference there, Commissioner, is going to be is for EMS being career, obviously that number is probably going to be 2 minutes or less in most cases. For fire, however, that number is going to be broad-based because it's going to largely depend on, that number is going to look completely different if it's from this facility at 10 o'clock in the morning when PSOs are here versus if it's one of the entirely volunteer stations. Obviously, they got to respond from wherever they are. But it is a very valid point. It adds to this number.
Thank you.
For the sake of this discussion, the 4, 6, 8, and 10-minute timeframes are best case scenario, things are staffed, call comes in, they go out the door. The 4, 6, 8, and 10 are based on the levels of life saving and perhaps in the intensity of or the need to be there at a particular time. Correct?
This is
'Cause,
the,
I mean-
the drive times for when they pull out the door.
Correct. Okay, got it.
And absent looking at specific cases, this is being able to say anywhere within the township you would get to in this time versus we have a call, this station receives a call and the call's right there. And it happened at this time of the day. That gets a little bit more difficult to discern in some cases, and we don't necessarily have the cleanliness of data that we would like to start making those more granular analyses. So
Right.
this is a very good substitute for that level of analysis, if that makes sense.
You got this information from our EMS department.
The call volumes are from the EMS department. The drive time analysis are done using software called ArcGIS, Esri's ArcGIS. Esri ArcGIS uses traffic data from a variety of sources, including TomTom and all your large GPS device, cell phone device firms that are out there. It aggregates the data and can average out over the course of whatever time we're looking for. So if I said between 1 and 2 in the afternoon, or if I just said any time in a 24-hour period, it will let you know what your drive times are based on the road network and averages along those road network lines. That's why these polygons look kind of like coral, so to speak, because they're very specifically looking at that road segment and the amount of time it takes to get to any point along that.
But that software was not applicable to our fire companies?
The software is a third-party software. It is independent of Cumberland County's EMS or fire data. We could run additional calculations on times provided within the data if it was available, but in many cases it wasn't available for that specific data.
And that, Commissioner, wasn't from your fire companies. The data wasn't available from the 911 center.
Well, I was going to say, I was going to sit here and bet that our fire companies could tell you what they're doing. Okay.
Yes,
All right.
absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Glad I asked the question.
But I mean, I guess I will say this was presented to a group of the committee members, firefighters, career staff, and there was a agreement that this is a very good approximation of where they're able to get to. Am I right in saying so?
Is it still understood that you have 6 minutes response time from the time the call comes in, and that you're actually responding and going out?
Yeah, it'd be 2 minutes for EMS, and the chief
Are you down to 2
indicating
minutes
4
now?
and 4 for fire.
Okay.
2 for
I know it
EMS,
used to be
4
6.
for fire.
So we'll look at the same thing here. I'm going to skip the text. We're just going to go right to the map. So we're looking at the same thing here for Station 2. Station 2 is the red dot here towards the western side of the township in the green. The green area represents where they're getting to in 4 minutes. Orange is 6. Where those oranges, that light green, sorry, the light green is 6. The orange is 8 and the red is 10. They look the same, sorry, up on the screen there. They're definitely different on the map, but in the document. So again, red is 10 and no color we're not getting to. So in this case, for Station 2, you'll see Beacon Hill is outside the 10-minute range, and a lot of areas around Station 24 outside the 10-minute range. And I will highlight that the reason Beacon Hill appears that way is because of the road network they have to use to get over there. It's very convoluted. And so it actually just adds so much time that Beacon Hill is unserved by Station 2 at the 10-minute.
Jesse, out of curiosity, and this may not be available to you, under this scenario with Station 2, Beacon Hill, I would imagine New Cumberland's station would probably be within 5-6 minutes of that. Do you have, is that considered at all?
We do have that data. Is that map included?
It is, yeah, that map's not included, but we have looked at that and discussed that with the automatic and mutual aid partners. There are definitely fire companies and EMS units outside the township that can get to the Beacon Hill area quicker than the township units can. And as Jesse indicated, that's simply due to the travel and the road mechanism, you know, that, so it can be served within the time frame, but not always necessarily by township units.
Are those, they're automatic? Does that mean if a fire call goes out for Beacon Hill, is New Cumberland automatically called to be dispatched there?
I believe that's correct, yes, yes. New Cumberland and Fairview,
okay.
so yes, that's where, when I talk about automatic and mutual aid, automatic aid would be if a structure fire comes in that area, those other fire companies are automatically dispatched. Mutual aid would be if the chief gets there and determines more help's needed and then calls for other companies. But the box alarms are set up such that because of that area, they automatically go. And in most cases, they're going to get there first.
How often is that box system viewed, and are there changes made, let's say, over the past 30 years?
Dave, maybe you want to speak to that?
Yeah, it was just recently, within the last year and a half, reviewed. And actually, the fire chiefs and Frank get together and actually look at that. And then the board's authorized me to be the signatory. So
Sure.
before it goes down to the county to be added into the CAD software. But it as a need arises, it's looked at and changes are made. But it's kind of continuously reviewed, you
I
know,
would
based
think,
upon incidents that happen.
Thank you.
And just to clarify your question, Commissioner Coates, so we did run a broad spectrum analysis looking at all the mutual aid stations that do respond to Lower Island Township for both fire and EMS. And we ran a calculation where, say, a station was located here or down here, and it was responding to Beacon Hill. We ran a scenario where the most likely point that apparatus would enter the township, you know, would be, say, right here or you know, on one of these side roads. The amount of time it takes them to leave the station to get to the township boundary, and then we subtracted that from the 4, 6, 8, 10-minute time frame, right? How much time within those ranges did they have left to get somewhere within the township to save somebody's life? And I have that data available if you would like to at some point review that. Suffice it to say, it's not as much coverage as you might anticipate. So with Station 2, this is where we're at in terms of these origination drive times. Any other questions on those? I'm going to jump down to Station 24 here. Similar text. Station 24 now, you'll see there's two dots down here. This is assuming the current, I'll call it the original Station 24. So the current or original Station 24, the green area here is where they're getting to in 4 minutes. The lime green area, which is like right here, is where they're getting to within 6 minutes. This orange area is 8 and the red is again 10. So you'll see there's a significant amount of area that's not covered. Now you will notice there's a bit of 10-minute coverage right here on the I-83. That's simply because of their ability to get over there in 10 minutes, but it's simply, unless they're responding to a vehicular accident, is a negligible response area in terms of any kind of residential action.
Okay.
If Station 24 were to be relocated to the second dot here, the one that's up a little further, you'll see greatly enhanced coverage within the region. Now, again, the colors kind of blend together in the presentation here, but these 4-minute time frame is here. The 6-minute time frame expands into here, up into the Arcona area, and over into this offshoot here, this little peninsula. Your 8-minute time frame is greatly expanded, and your 10-minute time frame is expanded to the north and slightly within the Beacon Hill area. So I'm just going to flip back here a little bit just to give you a comparison real quick. Station 24, where it currently exists. Station 24, if it were removed. I'll just do that one more time so you can see the difference. where it exists now if it were moved. So you can see greatly enhanced coverage there.
So overall, before I get to the overall conclusions, basically what the mapping data shows us is, obviously resources would need to continue at Station 1. If we were to move some component of EMS resources to Station 2, would significantly enhance the EMS coverage. And if there was the ability to consider moving Station 24, you just saw what that would do. And if you did the combination of those items, the coverage for the township would meet that 10 minutes or less in about probably 95 to 98% of the township. You know, there's still going to be some small areas where a mutual or automatic aid partner is simply going to be closer. From a cost prohibitive standpoint, you're not really going to get around that because you would almost have to, you know, build a firehouse at Beacon Hill and, you know, to put one piece there for that area for the calls when you have a mutual aid company that can get there in a timely manner, and the box alarms are already set up to do that. So, but this plan, you know, again, statistically would show 95 to 98% coverage of the overall township. So what that ends up meaning in conclusions is that Station 1 will remain viable for the future, minimal upgrades or renovations to consider. Station 2 location has significant potential to positively impact the deployment and response times for both fire and EMS if the deployment model was changed. And what that means is moving EMS resources to that location, ensuring that fire resources are able to respond from that location in a timely manner. Again, today they're staffed by volunteers, so we need to ensure that can continue. Station 24 is definitely a necessary part of the future in the overall coverage plan for the township. It just needs to be determined, does it make sense to let Station 24 in the current location, or does it not? When you look at the mapping and the response data and what it could additionally cover by moving it, makes sense to move it. However, realizing it's not that simple. Do you have the land? You know, can all the logistics be worked out to move it? That would require further study and look. Irregardless, Station 24 is going to be necessary, and something is going to have to be done because their existing firehouse will need renovations and or replaced. Current apparatus replacement plans adequate. However, future staffing plans should be considered and incorporated into that. We talked about that. You know, you can renovate a firehouse, you can put new fire trucks in it, but if there's nobody there to staff it, it defeats the purpose, okay? So they all kind of have to go hand in hand. Facility planning has to go hand in hand with staffing, which has to go hand in hand with apparatus replacement. So to that end, you know, the current planning team and processes that you have in place here in the township, I think are adequate. I think they're commendable, but I think your next step is outside of this apparatus planning and facility planning is to undertake a future staffing planning, meaning how viable is the volunteer system? Is the PSO system the future? What is the future of staffing? Because that's going to have to all come into part and parcel of this plan, okay? So that's the conclusions that the data and the overall information that we looked at has showed us.
Scott, before you move on,
Yep.
you alluded to the fact that it would be wise to take some EMS over to Station 2,
Correct.
but you wouldn't move all of EMS, is that right?
That is correct. I would not recommend moving EMS in its entirety. What we've discussed preliminarily with the leadership team, currently today EMS correct me, Captain Dean, if I'm wrong, is they run a 24-hour unit, and then they run a 12-hour unit. So you would still keep one unit here. I would envision that the 24-hour day unit would relocate to Station 2, and that's where your overall 24-hour unit would run, and you would still run your second truck or your 12-hour unit out of here. So there are some operational considerations to work out there. That would also involve the fire department potentially from a quick response standpoint overnight. So there are some operational considerations there, but we have looked at those and discussed those as the team, and we believe that all would be doable. But yes, it would not be relocating all resources.
Why would you not consider a rig for out in 24 when you have those windy roads and up and down and?
You're talking an EMS unit, you mean?
Correct,
Yeah.
yes.
So currently, the EMS call volume that we looked at earlier is not there in that particular area to warrant a dedicated unit, at least over the volume that we've looked at over the last 3 years. Now, obviously, we continue to look at that. The other thing is with relocating an EMS unit to Station 2, that will better service the Station 24 area. So it will have an EMS unit reaching that area quicker than it does today from this area. So there will be improvement to that area, but it's just simply from a data-driven standpoint, the call volume is not there to house a specific unit there.
What, so if I'm driving to the Lizburn Fire Company from the Lower Allen Park, let's say, it seems to me it's maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes up in my truck. What's driving the difference in that map? I mean, really, is it really the minute and a half or 2 minutes, I guess? Is that what's drawing it in? Or is there more to it? Like, are there other logistics? Because that seems like a very short distance to me. From the Lower Allen Park, where you're suggesting that it would be moved, or not where it would be moved, but you're suggesting that the recommendation could be to move something to Lower Allen Park to get better coverage.
And to your point, Mr. Chairman, is that, and we looked at that as well, and you can see the significance of the change just in that short distance. And, so another consideration, one of the reasons is that we would say that needs further looking and consideration. Maybe, if available, again, this is best case scenario, you obviously have to have the property to do it, but the data would have to be further analyzed to determine where is the best spot that you could find land to move it as far as you can, that it gets the best coverage for the overall township this way without impacting the coverage back this way. We already know we use the area of the township park from a landmass spot there. We already know it shows a positive impact, but the reality is if you were able to move it even further, it would be even better yet.
I wasn't fully understanding your question, and that explains my pause. So your question is, why is there such a big difference between the two?
Yes.
And the answer is the number of turns that you have to make, essentially, coming out of the current station versus making one turn and going up again.
So perhaps, does that include like averages, like with traffic waiting for?
Yeah, it includes averages. So these algorithms that it's looking at each road segment, and it's asking a question. To simplify it, it's essentially asking a question: when a car is on this, how long is it on here for, on average, over 24 hours? So where you have stop signs, you've got longer periods of time, so cars sitting on those roads. So every time you add a stop sign in, you're adding time. So if I'm making one right-hand turn onto a main road and driving, as is the case if you go with the new Station 24, I get much more coverage. But with the existing Station 24, I'm leaving the station, turning, leaving the going up to the road, turning, going down the road, turning, going up the road. That eats up a lot of travel time, those turns, because you're adding in wait time for left-hand or right-hand turning vehicles, stop signs, and so on and so forth. So while it may seem like a short drive, you know, from point A to point B, it adds a lot of time for this apparatus to move through there.
Go ahead, Chief.
The new 24? Yeah. Yes, sir.
Part of the expansion you see on here too, gentlemen, is that when you move that station out a mile or a mile and a quarter up the road, 35-mile-an-hour speed limit on Main Street, 40 up the road. The other thing is, to get out to Sheepford Road, we have to go across Thompson Lane, which cuts our drive time down, just because I met a UPS truck there one night with a tanker. We got the Vaseline out, we got past each other, and we were good to go. But that slows us down getting out to the Sheepford Road, out in that area, Liberty Cove, and then also up into Indian Lane and Brandon Road. So just that slight movement increases our response time. And actually on the volunteer side, I'm not advocating one way or the other, but I'm just saying on the response time, that would aid probably about 6 or 7 of our members in response time to the station, maybe decrease it a little bit for about 3 or 4 of us. But moving it there, and it's kind of like when Scott was talking about putting the station in Beacon Hill, you can put a piece of apparatus down there in the station. We don't have anybody down there, you know, to drive.
Well,
and if I could, question on EMS, one of the things we talked about was making sure that the station, whether it's renovated at our current facility or we build something new, has the ability to house EMS. As Arcona continues to grow, my concern always has been the railroad tracks. So as Arcona continues to grow, if that heat map starts increasing, you have a pretty good site to respond to it from our station.
And Chief, I actually have written down, I'm glad you brought it up, I have written down the railroad tracks, and the heat map is all well and good for 2020, and you can tell there's a little circle with Arcona. So my question was gonna be, does this new facility, does this consider the remaining development that is already planned for Arcona? We're gonna have hundreds of new homes still yet to be built, and how much that's added to it. And then secondly, we've discussed in the past having perhaps Station 24 relocate to Arcona, and that Charter's discussed the possibility of providing the township the land to do so. Is that a viable option, and would you be able to provide a subsequent or supplemental drive time map for a proposed station that would be located at Arcona, likely on Ross Moyne Road? And I'll add on Ross Moyne Road on the, I guess it'd be the east side of the railroad tracks.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Providing that data would not be difficult.
All right, commissioners, are there any more questions or
Yeah, so
comments?
from the representatives from Lizburn, Frank, Greg, and Frank, may I understand your comments that you are in favor of the recommendation to possible relocation of your station?
I'm not opposed to it. If by building a station at Arcona, that meant closing Station 24 and moving it in there, which we had talked about that doing the charrettes back in 04, 05. That was for Lower Allen Fire Company Station in that area. We don't have people run out of there right now. I don't know if people did come, but I think that would hurt your response times getting back out to the Lizburn area. Remember, we have unique, if you put move our station to Arcona, we have unique hazards in our area. We don't have hydrants. So we have to build apparatus to fit in our station and also carry a lot of water, where the Arcona area is higher. Again, response times from volunteers, we have the volunteers right now. That won't hurt us moving up there. I'm not sure the reception you're gonna get moving it off the property. But on the fire operations side, it can make a lot of sense. My only concern with that location is that backs up the stop sign at rush hour. And getting volunteers in and getting apparatus to turn out of there could be a problem depending on where the site will be to locate the intersection. That would be my only concern, is just getting in and out. Obviously, there's a lot of room out at the park, but, you know, there's a lot of study that has to go on that. But to get to our area of coverage, our primary area of coverage, moving that station enhances that. And the only other concern I have is if you build a new station on the site now, what do we do with the apparatus while it's being built? So stuff, you know, we have to still house it out of the weather and keep it charged, keep the equipment safe.
Well, maybe a new building on your existing site would not go where your existing building goes.
Right, and actually, my assistant chief and I talked about that, about how you do it in sections, but again, it's an ideal location to get out, but our entrance really sucks. Trying to get out of there and turn left or right, compared to even if you build it back further on the property.
Chief, one other consideration, and Lizburn, given your proximity right on the Fairview Township line, you often respond in Fairview Township, Monroe Township, Upper Allen. Would a relocation hurt your... So, as Lower Allen Township Commissioners, we obviously have a responsibility to make sure our residents are covered. At the same time, I at least want to be cognizant to make sure that we're not taking away coverage from those rural areas who also desperately need fire coverage, to avoid a tragedy, because we're not the only ones who fund the department, and you have a community out there that's not solely based in Lower Allen Township that relies on you. Would that hinder your efforts by relocating Station 24?
No, only in the sense that it's gonna give us an extra mile to get into Fairview. Kind of like they were talking about our mutual aid companies coming into the township. Fairview's not doing this. That's not gonna, when you looked at the map, it's at the Public Safety Ad Hoc Committee, like you've all done. We're the only fire protection out there. We really respond more into Montague Township, Fairview Township, sometimes down to Warren Township, only because we have a tanker usually. But Fairview, they rely on us out there, but that extra response, that's not gonna do anything. Fairview used to have a station on Spangler Mill Road. I mean, they closed that one down, you know, with staff and get all that apparatus.
So we floated the Arcona idea, which again has been discussed in the past, so it's not new tonight. But in that sense, in terms of getting into your York County municipalities that you respond to, the community park would be preferable in your mind to Arcona. Is that correct?
If you're talking about closing our station down and move it to Arcona, or down the road, our volunteers will not get there in time. Now, it will increase the call volume for the station based on its location, which could lead to having live-in programs, staff, people hanging out the station. And we run 180 calls a year compared to 700 plus below around. All right, so we don't have guys hanging out there because we may go a day or two or three without a call. So it's no fun, you know, to get guys hanging out. Plus, we don't have the facilities to hang out. We don't have a TV. We don't have a comfortable chair. We don't have any of this other stuff. We are a firehouse. You know, we were built in '58 and added on to it in '56. We had an electrical fire out there last year. The PSO Landis was on site for when the arcing occurred. We shut everything down. We were without power for about 2 days. We had to have BBC come in on emergency call. I found out, unbeknownst to me, when they built this in '76, the electrical panel came out of the warehouse somewhere. It was regenerated that way. We have no idea how old it was. So, you know, the rest of the building, that's why we figured that bringing it up to codes is probably more expensive than figuring out the way to build it. And we don't need it. We don't need a brick building. We can do a lot with little out there.
So my follow-up then, and I appreciate the comments. Obviously, anything that would happen would be in consultation with what is in the best service for call volume. If I can throw out a hypothetical for Scott and Jesse, since the Arcona station's been floated as an idea. If it, say that would be relocating 24 to an Arcona station, would there be any sense to having, Station 2 is older, it's in need of major renovations to make it functional for full-time staffing to be there. Would it make any sense to say sell Station 2, sell Station 24, and build one station so that we would have Station 1 here and then a new Station 2 in Arcona on the other side of the train tracks? Because I imagine that response time to Bethany Village is still pretty good. It probably costs you 2 minutes from. You're shaking your head, Tony. You don't like that idea.
Yeah, I have a lot of all the things you're saying. I have a lot of data. It's just not in this presentation that really shows the value of these stations where they're currently located, and they actually create. There's another map I have, which is the response times for 1, 2, and 24 all on the same map, and there is a very strong synergy between how they overlap without having too much overlap. So, the 4-minute response times are getting tight without being completely overlapped. So I would highly recommend looking at that. And I believe that's what you're alluding to here.
Remember, the EMS numbers you saw have all the high volume facilities excluded. We're doing residential calls only. Show that we took out Bethany, we took out those high volume facilities. That's why that heat map is so accurate.
The first heat map doesn't.
Yeah, so there's multiple iterations of this data. There is data with fire and EMS combined. There's data with fire and EMS separated. And then specific to EMS, because of the nature of the calls they run, there is EMS basic life support, advanced life support upgrades or downgrades. But then there's also EMS data with high volume addresses filtered out. So where you're running hundreds of calls a year to Bethany Village, taking that out and looking at the distribution of calls so that you understand, you can remove some special needs and kind of understand what's happening in the rest of the community. So other high volume areas that aren't as high of a volume are still getting a fair lift in terms of, what's going on. And that led to these recommendations, the evaluation of that.
So at the end of the day, to summarize, your recommendation is the 3-station model provides the best coverage, and that includes where Station 1 and 2 are currently located, and then Station 24 at either proposed location. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's what we believe at the end. All the data is shown and all the considerations, everything that we've looked at. And again, the only part that's not firm is should Station 24 move or not, because there's so many variables to that. If you looked at it simply at these maps tonight, obviously you'd say, yes, move it. But as the chief said, there's lots of other things, the staffing and things to take into consideration.
Right.
But we do believe the 3-station model works. We do believe the current locations work, minus some final determination on Station 24. Does it move or does it stay where it is? And if it moves, where does it move to? As the chief indicated, a lot of considerations to take into account there. That's why we didn't yet, at the conclusion of this initial project, to make a firm recommendation on Station 24, because it's just going to require more stuff.
Okay, understood. So in that case, let me just ask you then, Scott, and I'll shift gears a little bit here. We're talking about full-time having an EMS crew at Station 2. I imagine at some point it may make sense to have PSO stationed out there during the day. Say we make Station 2 fully operational, at least for some portion of the day. Does that change? A lot of your recommendations for Station 1 are, with the current staffing here and now, we need more room, change the lounge, more room in the kitchen, more sort. If we end up taking staff from here now and alleviate the pressure on Station 1 and put staff at Station 2, does that change any of those recommendations for improvements that need to be made to Station 1?
I don't think it will. I certainly follow your concept. However, I think as you look at your staffing moving forward, again, you'd certainly want to believe that you can maintain and or increase volunteerism, and hopefully you can. But obviously in anything in emergency and disaster planning, we have to plan for worst case scenario. So worst case scenario would be that you're likely to end up increasing that PSO staff or something that looks like that program. So the reality is you're probably going to have those needs here irregardless, and then you're going to have those same needs at Station 2 for the future. So I don't think you'll be able to shift from one station to another. You may do that initially on the EMS side, but on the fire side, I don't think you'll be simply shifting personnel. I think you'll end up adding personnel.
Okay, that makes sense. In the interest of time, I will reserve my question about apparatus and maybe follow up with you because I know we're running long here. But just to close my comments, I appreciate this. This data is invaluable to us. I think in making sure our residents have the level of service that we expect and that our residents would like to see. So I appreciate all the time that went into the study. Chief, I appreciate your input, and captains, and I will follow up with other questions unless we have anything else that arises from our discussion tonight. So thank you.
By moving the station, again, I'm not advocating one way or the other. Moving the station, you see the Beacon Hill. Yeah, you see how we increase those responses. Now, granted, that's 10-minute time on. We're first due out there right now because once you get past Fairview, you come on the west of the fire, we're the next closest station. So by moving that, now we can hit Old Forge Road and get right out there and get in there within 10 minutes.
And just to follow up on your comments, there is certainly, as Jesse indicated, there's lots of more maps. We didn't want to inundate. We could be here all night looking at maps, so we used the ones that we believe best showcase. But we're happy to provide more maps. My contact information's in there. I'm happy to address additional questions, anything that that we can do post tonight. Again, the team's goal was the same as yours. We want the best end product for your residents. So certainly be happy to answer any questions outside of the meeting as well.
Right. Thank you. Commissioners, are there any other specific questions to the presentation at this point? I would just like to thank you for going through this process and presenting this information. I think it goes without saying that there's a lot of work to be done and a lot of discussions that'll be had internally. My only question is probably at Director Hall and maybe at the manager is, what are you going to do next? And if you can just give me like a less than a minute kind of synopsis.
Seconds.
Yeah.
The board has already looked at our presentation for Station 2 in terms of the facility. We actually have in the 22 budget, there is some funds there to take a look at Station 2 because of some of the issues with Station 2. So that's part of it. And then the seed money for a feasibility study for what happens to Station 2 is also included in that for like a phase 1 study. So we're looking at that. We'll continue the discussions. You heard the recommendation that we do a facility, or not facility, but we do a staffing study. That may be a 23 proposal. And the same thing with apparatus. That may be in 23 as well. Because, as everyone said, apparatus and staff kind of go hand in hand. You can't have, if you have one and you can't, even engines and you can't staff them, what's the point?
Okay.
So we'll be moving ahead with that, but we're taking this as our base. This was our first kickoff piece to that, and then we'll be doing some strategy off of this.
Longer term. This is all long term.
Right. There's nothing short term in here at all.
Okay. Thank you. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us and being here, making this presentation. It was definitely great information, so thanks.
Great. Thank you all for your time. Appreciate it.
All right. Moving on our agenda, audience participation on any item on the agenda. If there's any item that you are here to talk about that's actually on the agenda, let us know now, and when we get to that item, we'll bring you up to the podium. Is there anyone here to speak of any item on the agenda itself? Okay. There'll be another section down here in just a little bit, and I can't imagine the rest of this stuff's going to take as long as any of the first half has here. So,
Mr. President, if I may speak out of order for a minute.
sure.
Would it be appropriate perhaps to reshuffle our
Yes.
agenda and allow the residents to speak at this time
With
prior to the consent agenda?
Yes, if there's some consent to do that, I would be more than happy to do that. Is there anybody that would object to bringing the public comment to the forefront of our agenda at this point?
No.
Okay, so what we're going to do, folks, I know there's a lot of folks here that are here to talk, I think, about Arcona. And so we're going to go ahead and skip down to what would be number 9 on our agenda this evening. And that's any item, any business pertinent to the township. We usually limit discussions to about 15 minutes. All I would ask is if whoever's going to be the first spokesperson here this evening to come up to the podium, that everyone else just kind of pay attention to what that person is saying, and we'll try to limit to some redundancies if we can, but I would like to let anybody speak that would like to. So what you will do is just come up to the podium, give your name and your address, and then the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Donna Krevlin. My husband and I moved to the Arcona development from Bucks County in January of 2021. We had made settlement the month before. We were told by the salesman, Seth Hamill, that the streets would receive their final paving after the last townhouse was sold. The last townhome on 3255 Maytier Lane was sold on June 15th, 2021. This was over 4 months ago. The Arcona homes in our section, which is Chelsea, were sold, the first ones were sold almost 3 years ago. Charter Homes has built 8 developments in Harrisburg, Mechanicsburg, Pittsburgh, and York areas. Mechanicsburg alone has seen 4 developments rise in various stages of development. This multi-million-dollar company with the expertise and the construction manpower has the capabilities to orchestrate the final piece of our Arcona development, which is the final paving of our streets. The Arcona residents living in this unfinished development are enduring the following hardships due to the rutted, rough, and bumpy unpaved streets. We have frequent flat tires due to the exposed sewer drains along Wolford Way. We have damage to our cars from this coarse, unfinished street. We have neighbors falling on the uneven sinkhole-like rough street, and we're forced to walk in the streets because there's no sidewalks in our section. We have aggravated back issues due to driving our car on this unpaved street. Water doesn't drain properly after a storm because of the uneven streets. And God forbid there's a fire in our section. A fire truck just might have trouble driving along those streets. Charter Homes has received payment in full for all the Arcona homes that have been sold, but the residents have been shortchanged because Charter didn't finish the job. So now it's time to finish the job before winter comes, and then there will be more obfuscations as to why Charter can't put the final finish on the streets.
Thank you. I think is there anyone else here to make comment before I ask staff to? Yes, please.
Thank you, Commissioner Valone. I'm Kelly Logan, and my address is 3212 Emerson Way. I thought it might be helpful, or we thought it might be helpful, to have a few pictures, if you'd like to see those pictures. I can hand these to you. A couple of sets of the same. So I think Donna did a great job of kind of articulating for all of us our concerns and, boiling it down to, we are concerned about the fact that there have been damage to vehicles. We're concerned about people's health and safety, and we're concerned about the value of the properties. There are people who have actually tried to sell their homes and they see the condition of the roads. I think you can see from some of those pictures how the roads are already degrading and the water is standing in the streets. We're really concerned that we've heard in the past from Charter that they are going to get things done, and then all of a sudden they've missed the timeline and it goes through another winter. We're concerned about water and ice sitting on those roads over the winter again. So I know they've made some statements that they intend to do this year, but we are all really concerned that they're going to let this date slip again. And it's going to be another winter where we're concerned about slipping on the water that's sitting in those roads. So we really are concerned, as Donna indicated. You can see even in some of those pictures, it was very dry today, but there's still water standing in those decayed roads. So I think that's all that I had, and I don't know if there are others, but we've had some people that wanted to speak tonight, but because of the long meeting, can come back again in 2 weeks if that's helpful. But we're really hopeful that you all will hold Charter accountable for this. I know they've said they intend to do this, but I don't know if they've given you guys dates to the township on when they're actually going to do it, or if they've got a timeline or a project plan. But that's all I had to ask. So
Mr.
thank
President,
you.
I don't have any problem with someone else
Thank
would like
you.
to speak.
I'm going to allow anybody that would like to speak.
Good evening. I'm Connie Kindler, and I reside at 3209 Emerson Way in the Chelsea part of Arcona. I concur with what my neighbors have shared. And just one additional comment. Before paving is done, I'm hoping that Charter will give full attention to repairing the base course. And I know that the township has a great standards in terms of how you repair and manage your roads, and just hope that you will give the hold Charter to those same standards as they repair the base course before they do the paving. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to make comment?
Hi, my name is Alana Berger. I live at 3202 Schultz Place. We moved into Arcona in the Chelsea part of the development 2.5 years ago, June 2019. We moved there from a Keystone development in Marietta, Pennsylvania, and we went through the same thing where they refused to put the final coat of macadam on the roadway, to the point where we had potholes in the middle of winter. And it also got to the point where garbage trucks were damaged trying to pick up our garbage, and they would refuse because the roads were in such bad shape. If our roads aren't fixed soon, again, going through winter, we're going to have potholes based on the degradation of the current roadway. So we would really appreciate if there's anything you can do to hold Charter accountable, that you would do that for us. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else that would like to make public comment on anything pertinent to the township, or anyone else from the Arcona community that's here that feels like they would like to comment on this issue? Good. All right. Thank you again for your patience. But I'll ask, I guess I'll start with Mr. Eby or Tom, the manager. And my first question is, I mean, you're going to be educating the board a lot here, as I'm assuming, because what I'm hearing sounds like this might be a little bit out of our control, because I can't imagine if it wasn't our control fully, we would be in this situation. So can somebody explain, educate us why kind of where we're here, why we're here right now?
With Public Works, I mean, my work group is, we're involved with the building and zoning. I can answer your questions, but I think it's probably better that Becky or Tom answer the question.
Hi, Commissioner. Charter Homes came into the board in August regarding Phase 2.3 and got a reduction in their financial security. Inspections were done and the new security was posted and extended till August 9th of 2022. So the outstanding improvements itemized in that was reviewed and approved by our township engineer and inspected were wearing course on streets, about 3,000 square yards, wearing course on alleys, that would be over the base course, another 6,000 square yards, some trails, about 115 linear feet of trails, stormwater pipe flushing, and E&S maintenance. So those are the outstanding items for Phase 2.3 in this financial security reduction. They have till August 9th of 2022 to complete those improvements according to our extension.
A couple of things. Number one, you understand the streets are private. We have no MOU on those streets with Charter on when they're supposed to complete improvements. Now, there has been several emails going back and forth with Anthony Ferranda Dietrich from Charter. He has said repeatedly that they're going to do the paving this year. I know that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but he said they were going to try to have it done by the end of October and no later than the second weekend in November. So we're not there yet. I understand the frustration. Believe me, I lived on a street that was kind of like this for a year. I understand the frustration, and but until they get ready, if ever, to dedicate those streets, the township standards don't necessarily apply. I hate to say this, but it's a private matter right now. And the one lady said, anything that we can do, they would appreciate us doing. And believe me, anything we can do, we will do. But there's just not a lot we can do with a private street.
To force them to do
something by a specific date. There will be a time where, let's say, worst case scenario, and it's a year from now, or not a year, but August
it
of
sounds like
22,
August.
and it's not done yet, we could call the security and have it done. Call their security and pave it ourselves, but that's a long way away, and I understand they're going to have to live, maybe. I mean, hopefully Charter follows through on their promise to get it done this year.
But that's August 2022.
22, that's
Yes.
right, this coming year.
That's a long way down the road. It gets tiresome to hear how wonderful these folks are. So this contractor is, and then hear this over and over again. That's just my personal opinion, for whatever it's worth.
I'll allow it, sure.
Please come up to
the
the
podium, please.
If the township has nothing to do with this private development, why'd you give them an extension?
John, you would answer that as far as,
Thank you.
as far as,
Get his name and address on the record also.
Stuart Krevlin, 1419 Wolford Road.
I guess standard practice is that when the financial security to guarantee public improvements is coming due, the township engineer does the inspections and report that Becky Davis just summarized, and the Board of Commissioners used their expectation that Charter would perform during that time period and granted the time extension. And as Becky Davis stated a little while ago, you can't call in the security until August of next year and have township resources or contractors pave it and finish the job.
But the security that was extended, that was all encompassing of all of those items all in one?
Yes.
They're
because
not separate?
It's by phase. So in other words, when phase 2.3 was approved, and then it was later amended to modify the townhouse layouts. You approve contingent upon certain things, and one thing would be posting of a developer's agreement and improvement security. So all improvements such as trails and stormwater systems and roadways are included within that one public guarantee. That would include stormwater facilities also. So that is very typical, and they can complete streets and get release of security for streets. They can complete stormwater, get release of security for stormwater. In this case, they've done everything on the streets but the wearing course. They've done all or most of all the other improvements.
When the security gets, if I remember correctly, when a security gets extended, it usually gets raised too, right?
There's a mandatory 10%
mandatory
increase written into
10%,
the
okay.
ordinance. But if they had $200,000 of improvements a couple years ago, and the last time it was amended, they had 100,000, it would be 100,000 plus 10%.
It could be reduced based on the improvements that they've made, and then increased based on the balance of things that have not been done. The gentleman asked, why do we even ask for improvement security if we don't have anything to do with the development? I didn't say we didn't have anything to do with the development. I said there were private streets in there, and we asked for security because when they file a subdivision plan, they put certain things on that plan that they say they're going to do. That gets approved by the planning commission and this board, and it gets filed at the county. We need security to make sure they do those things, but they also have a deadline, and we have not reached that.
I see.
Are they building anywhere else in this area?
I'm Blaze Liffick, 3202 Schultz Place. My wife Alana mentioned that we've had experience with this sort of thing in the past in another development by another builder. We lived there for 9 years, and they did not put a top coat on the streets. As a consequence, not only was there continuous damage to our vehicles and to other vehicles such as garbage trucks, as she had mentioned, but it made snow removal extremely difficult and hazardous, and to the point where it was essentially ineffective because they kept damaging their trucks on the raised lips of all those water retention drains. So, this has got to get done. Don't let this drag out another 9 years, please. We've been through that experience. It's awful. And we just had no recourse at all. If there's a deadline of August, hold their feet to the fire, please, and make them get it done at least by then. But they really ought to get it done this fall.
It sounds like the deadline, if they don't get it done, the security is there for the township to move in and do the work and draw from the security. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. It's been a year
I'm
in
asking you to
August.
please do that if nothing else happens.
Well, I don't know where you came from, but I like to echo my colleague, Vice President Black. Lower Allen Township is a first-class township in more than just name. That's not going to happen. I will be here. I won't be on the board, but I will be here and watch them do it. That's not going to happen. You know what? That's just not going to happen.
There's no reason we would extend it
Absolutely
past
not.
August.
No, I would recommend, the manager makes a good point, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. If they ask for another extension, tell them to, well, never mind.
No, thank you.
Yeah, that's it.
That's an answer.
Is that all the public comment right now on this issue? So I'm sorry that you're having to go through what you're going through, and I know I'll do my best to keep my eye on things, and I'll be checking with staff to see what activities going on out there on a more regular basis. I promise you that.
Mr. President.
Commissioner Kutz?
Thank you. Tom, is there, right now the holdup Charter claims is on availability of their contractor to pave the roads. We have the capability as the township to do it. Are we within a legal right to offer to pave them and they can pay us what market value would be to pave the streets? Is that because they're private roads and haven't been dedicated yet?
That's correct.
Okay.
It's private property. We can't perform services on private property.
Why are they saying their contractor can't do the work?
They're not saying the contractor can't do the work. They're saying that they use a paving contractor who has not yet given them the date, a certain date. They said they would fit them into this year, but they have not yet given them a certain date. And Anthony indicated that he would let the residents know as soon as they were given a certain date. So they're saying, Charter's saying they're dependent on the paving contractor to determine what date they're able to pave.
So I'm also hearing tonight that there's a middle of November kind of time frame that there's question on that, of course. So what I would suggest to staff at this point, if you will, is to stay very, very close to this, and if you can report back to the board, perhaps weekly at least, and maybe even sooner, as if there's any new developments as to what's going on, if you have any communication with the representatives from Charter Homes, and just broadcast it to the entire board so that we're all in the loop.
Can we
in as real time as possible as to any information that's moving to this mid-November deadline. So
Can we
know.
send a rather unfriendly letter this time? To do whatever they need to do, or just to do what they need to do rather than.
Sure, we can send letters. We've been dealing with them now for, I don't know, how many, 7 years? Unfriendly letters don't work. I mean, I've sent a series of unfriendly emails to Mr. Miranda Dietrich, and they generally get a response, but it doesn't necessarily spur action. I think, again, he said they were going to try to have it done. They were told by their contractor that they would have it done hopefully by the end of October or a couple weeks after that. So they still got 3 weeks. I'd say we give them their time that they asked for, and after that, and I will be glad to have contact with them tomorrow to let them know about the comments we heard tonight and try to get an answer again out of them. I get the vague answers of end of October, maybe a couple weeks later. They're not going to commit to anything.
Right.
Does their lack of follow through now have anything to do with how we follow through with them as this project goes forward?
I would not try to speculate on their reasons for this at all. I doubt it. I think Ford's actually been very, has worked well with them at this point.
Yes.
So there's no, there would be no, maybe I didn't understand your question, but there would be certainly no reason for them to drag their feet because they're angry with us for any reason.
Oh, I thought maybe we could drag our feet for a change.
Well,
okay, that's for another discussion.
And I think that, it was asked of us to do anything that we can do. And what I'm hearing what we can do is stay very, very vigilant, hyper vigilant about this right now in this window that we're hearing. It's my understanding, based on what I heard in between the public hearing and this meeting, is that there was a bunch of folks that went to the Planning Commission meeting, and I believe the representative from Charter was there, correct? Yep. And so that happened in front of the Planning Commission. Now these folks are here making comment to our board. I think that if we just stay close to this, that's what we can do, and we'll stay as vigilant as we can. Yep.
And Mr. President, if I may, I would encourage the residents. I know Mr. Logan has been in touch with Charter, and I'm sure is keeping you all apprised. I also live in Arcona, so to the extent that you would like any further information, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And any information I receive, I will be happy to share in the Arcona Residents Facebook group as well, and make sure that Mr. Logan has a way to let you all know what's going on. I think he's been a good point of contact with Anthony. We've all been copied on the emails that he's been sending and championing on your behalf. So I anticipate that you'll be kept up to date either by himself or this board if you have any other questions.
And again, thank you all for your patience tonight. It just happened to be a lot of presentations. Yes. Thank you. Good night. At this point, commissioners, we have our consent agendas. If there's any commissioner, staff member, or anyone in attendance who would like to have an item on the consent agenda removed for further discussion can request so now. Is there a request to have is there a request for the removal of any item on the consent agenda? Hearing none, I would be looking to accept the motion to approve the items on the consent agenda which are listed.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Black, a second from Commissioner Shin. Is there any questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Under your president, I will not be looking, as the agenda says, to accept a motion to enact ordinance 2021-05. We had our public hearing prior to this meeting, and if we want to just start some discussion, but I think at this point we are going to possibly direct staff to look into this further, correct?
Some of the options, obviously, we're not going to, you're not going to take action on tonight. There's 5 recommendations, and we probably just need some direction from the board on what you want to do with those 5 recommendations. Because if they could, you could approve all of them or ask for all of them to be included. Some of them, one of them, but the substantive ones are going to generate a second hearing. So I think, in the interest of time, I don't know if you want to go through these 5 recommendations tonight. You have them in front of you. We can certainly bring it up in another meeting. We were hoping, John and I had some, we talked about some dates for a possible second meeting, and if you would like us to incorporate all 5 of the suggestions, the recommendations, we can do that. Have it to the planning commission. What are the dates, John? Do you recall?
I put them all away here to make room for the last presentation, but I do know that if you gave us some direction tonight to address, for example, Mr. Black's concerns were kind of outside the 5 items, but we could prepare and address Mr. Black's concerns, Commissioner Black's concern, and any or all of the 5 items, then staff would be working on that between now and your next meeting on, I believe it's the 8th of November. And with that in mind, then theoretically, if you gave us direction on the 8th of November to restart the process, the soonest we could have a public hearing would be the 13th of December. That would give us the 30 days required for the planning agencies and give us time to do the 2 advertisements.
So for the sake of time, I think that's a great idea. I think if you go and put something together regarding those 5, and we're going to zero in on the 5 suggestions that came out of the planning commission, right? Okay. If we can just have something presented to us there, and also addressing not only Commissioner Black's questions and comments, but maybe if there was anything else that you took note of from the other commissioners up here as well.
Okay, so then the best case scenario time-wise would be that we would successfully answer your concerns on those 5 or 6 or 7 items. You'd have time prior to your meeting on the 8th to consider them, and then that's assuming you reach consensus on the 8th to go with the state, what staff has prepared, what I gave you timeline is the quickest we could do it. If on the 8th you say, we need more research and input, or we're not sure about A and B, then it would push it back at least one more meeting.
Right. So I would think at this, excuse me, I'm sorry. I would think at this time, though, what we would do is if that information gets communicated to us, between now and then, and commissioners, I would just suggest, whatever questions you might have, give them back offline to staff, and then what they present to us will be closer to us getting to a consensus so that we can move the process along faster.
So,
Commissioner Kutz?
Mr. President, in that case, if I can get the ball rolling, and if anyone would like to add anything to this, that would be welcome. I think a motion would be in order, and I would move to authorize staff to make substantive changes to proposed ordinance 2021-05, consistent with the 5 recommendations of the Lower Allen Township Planning Commission outlined in the document we received tonight, prepared by John Eby for October 25th, 2021. And I'll start with those 5 to authorize staff. If anyone else has anything that they'd like to authorize staff to do, that would be welcome.
And I would want to address Commissioner Black's specific concerns.
And I'd be happy to include that in my motion as well. So Michelle, that'll be to authorize staff for the 5 recommendations and a 6th authorization to address Commissioner Black's concerns that he espoused at the public hearing.
Thank you, Commissioner.
That's the motion.
That's your motion?
Yes, sir.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Kutz. I have a second from Commissioner Black. Is there any discussion or comments, questions?
Yeah, I would be very interested in being assured, especially with respect to Vice President Black's concerns that he raised about the aesthetics and what's going on in Front Street in Harrisburg, that we don't have that happen here. And that if I understood all the meetings I've been to, we can keep that from happening. And I'm hoping that comes out loud and clear, so that we don't have to face some of the issues that those folks are facing.
And Commissioner, I believe that this would allow staff to do that because the first recommendation relates to criteria for aesthetics and stealth. So I believe staff can explore those areas to make sure that doesn't happen.
Well, if we already have that, I don't understand why there's concern. So something isn't filtering through, is my point.
So go ahead, John, if you'd like.
Well, so staff will prepare an explanation as to whether or not we're better off or worse off enacting it, as Mr. Black said, and get into the details of what specifically the proposed draft would do to preclude the scenario he's expressing, or to at least steer it into a much less intrusive environment.
I was pretty sure I understood that, and I got confused as the ball was rolling. I'm finished.
And I'll be available if you want to talk, John.
Who wants to?
You have a motion and a second on the floor.
Yeah, we
Okay,
have to
all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Next on the agenda, under your president, I'd be looking for a motion to remove Robert Fitzke, a police officer in Lower Allen Township Police Department, from probationary status effective 10/26/2021.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Black, second from Commissioner Kutz. All those in favor?
Could I just say
Yes,
something?
sir.
I would like to share with the captain and the director. I had personal communication with Officer Fitzke, a friend of mine, caught up in a scam, and a lot of money involved. And Officer Fitzke was right where he needed to be, didn't get any of his money back. But that wasn't the point. It was someone who listened and who paid attention and treated him with the respect that our residents should. So I thank you. Thank Officer Fitzke for me, if you will, please, both of you. Thank you.
He is a rock star.
Yeah, good. And there's a candy company down in York. Fitzke Candy. Okay, I'm done with that.
Mr. President, I'd be happy to withdraw my second if Commissioner Shin would like the honor of doing so.
That's fine. That's fine.
I have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next, I'd be looking to accept a motion to remove Neil Chimmel Freeburn, a police officer in the Lower Allen Township Police Department, from probationary status, effective 10/26/2021.
So moved.
I have a motion from Commissioner Shin.
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Black. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next, on our agenda, unfortunately, I'm looking to accept the resignation of Bradley McCullough, Township Engineer and Director of Public Works, effective October 26, 2021.
So moved, regrettably.
Second. Likewise.
I have a motion from Commissioner Kutz, a second from Commissioner Shin. I would just like to say regretfully as well, I'm sorry that Brad's leaving us. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next, on to our Finance Department.
We have some remaining funds to go over budget-wise. As we typically do in our process, I thought I'd go numerically, starting with streetlight fund. As you know, this is where we collect money and provide streetlights for the residents. I'm anticipating a $9,000 surplus this year. Next year, we're budgeting for a $6,000 surplus, and that's exactly as expected. I mean, as electricity increases, the surplus goes down until we eventually have to raise it again. We have a fairly good amount of fund balance, so we're not going to have to raise it, of course, next year. I don't think we're going to have to raise it in 2023, and probably not 2024 either. So we're sitting pretty good there. If there's no questions on that, I'll move on to sanitation. This is where we provide refuge, yard waste, recycling, primarily for residents and for a few businesses who wish to participate.
Rick, do you have a number for us?
04 is the fund number.
404?
You'll find it following the fire budget. It's right after fire capital.
Okay, sanitation there.
Sanitation.
340.
I don't think there's any surprises here. As you know, we renegotiated the contract, so the rate will go from $72.96 to $76.10 a quarter next year. One thing I might want to point out here, although it's not comparatively or relatively a lot of money for this particular fund, but we've never had bank fees before, and I have put them in there. It's under expenditures down under 427, 480 bank and collection fees. There's $6,410 budgeted.
You need a new bank, Rick?
Well, we have never had them before. We are in an investment pool. There's two of them to pick from. We're really going to have to probably stay in one because we need the fund accounting that they provide. They can also split things between different entities, and in this case, we have 3 different entities. We'll have 1 deposit going into the township and the 2 authorities. And we have multiple interconnections, you know.
Who are we with?
We are with the Pennsylvania School District Liquid Asset Fund. They've never had a fee before, so it's a difficult thing, much more difficult than you might think, changing banks. The authorities would also have to change. But that is something I'm looking into. I haven't had time to fully research it. I do know right now with our checks, we scan them. We have a scanner, so we get good funds the next day. We start earning interest on it. Pliget, the alternative to where we are now, does not have scanner capability, so we would have to start driving the deposits to the bank every day and would probably lose a day of float. But still, that's something I need to study a little bit further. So if it comes time to change banks, we would need board approval to do that.
Where's Ken Miller when you need him, right?
Isn't that the truth? Yeah. That's a name I haven't heard of for quite some time.
I see him at the gym.
If there's no further questions on sanitation fund, we'll move on. It's actually the very next page, highway aid. Highway aid covers fairly, this is money we get from the state. It covers very consistently a number of services that we provide. The one that varies is the street program, the repaving program, which we do every other year. The streets to be repaved were covered when Pennsylvania American Water was in. And we can certainly, Becky could certainly cover that again if you're interested in hearing, or not.
At high level, there's approximately 4 miles of roads. Developments would be Allendale, Highland Park, Highland Estates, and it really is going to depend on what we get in from liquid fuels from PennDOT. So, but that's what we have projected for next year.
Moving on to the next fund, debt service. I actually have this one numbered, 29. This covers payment of our bonds and capital leases. As you recall, in 2020, we refinanced 2 bonds and consolidated them into one, plus we refinanced our pension obligation bond as well. That saved us in the neighborhood of $300,000. Unfortunately, it's a one-time saving, so it's back to business as usual in 2022. That's why you see the increase in debt service there. There is no new debt planned. Our new bond does expire in 2025, as I think I've mentioned recently. We do have projects, particularly fire apparatus, coming up that will probably require us to float a new bond at that time. And last and really probably least is the capital improvement fund, which has no projects really coming out of there this year. So unless anybody has any questions on any of those, the only other remaining question, I guess, we have the possibility of a budget meeting next week if you...
Wednesday.
I'm sorry, next Wednesday, if you think we need one.
Well, Monday's the night before the election, and the polls are here in the building, so the meeting is scheduled on the public record for Wednesday. At the
right.
holding places for
That's
Wednesday.
right, I'm sorry, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
But,
I missed that.
We approved that schedule
Right.
last year.
I would, if there is a meeting next Wednesday, I cannot do Wednesday evenings. It's one of the 4 nights I have night class.
Understood. So before we go into the schedule of when that would be, I think we have to determine if we need a meeting. The thing I would maybe be, I have questions about is the overall fund balance and how that plays into, so a couple of years ago, we were talking about the big items coming in. We're talking about the fire apparatus plan, the capital plan. And so then we were in the midst of, following up with the ad hoc study and planning out, and you did a great job, by the way, planning out a spreadsheet with all kinds of scenarios. But basically, it kind of said, hey, in this year, this is maybe what we would project to have, what our expenses would be and how they would grow based on some of the decisions that have been made over the last few years or however many years. And so now this year we've gone through COVID. Looks like, from what I hear, it looks like we're going to have and I've seen, we're a pretty good surplus, perhaps for 2021. Okay, we have the ARPA funds. There's other kinds of things, other things coming into play, and I'm talking specifically on the general fund. Is it possible, or is it like just an enormous amount of work to do something that shows kind of a long-term where the township will be? And I just think it's important that we continue to educate the board on what our fund balance is, where we project it to be down the road, and what that means from a dollar standpoint and how we manage our fund balance. It comes up, it helps us with our credit rating by having a certain amount over and above what would be a standard amount in the public sector or a municipality to have for a fund balance. I just think it'd be important for us to have some idea of, if there's the word flexibility, I might want to use that lightly, in how we look at things over the next 5 years or so, maybe 5 to 7 years. Do you recall that spreadsheet that you did a few years ago or a couple of years ago? It kind of just, it put us out, and it predicted to some degree that we might be looking at, needing revenue here and then we came up with this resolution last year or the year before to start to address it. But I still think the big question is, where do we really stand with the fund balance?
Okay, I could put something together.
And so I'm not sure we need a meeting, because the budget's the budget, but I'm talking specifically about just having, I'd like to revisit that as part of the budget process every year if we can.
Do you want to do that soon, or do you want to wait till after reorganization next year?
Well, I mean, I don't.
I mean, it's a lot depends on the board and what directions they want to go in. Some are much more project oriented than others.
I think the question is, do you want to go over this before you put the budget on the table?
I don't have a need to go over it before I put the budget on the table, because I think the budget that we've come up with for the accounts seem really good. It's a favorable budget.
So we won't need the Wednesday meeting.
Right, I'm talking specifically about having some time before we actually enact the budget. It would be a good knowledge to have a breakdown of where we stand with the fund balance.
Okay, well, I can definitely give you.
There's some confusion.
I
There's
mean,
just a lot of confusion.
projecting becomes. The more I know as far as what the board wants to do, the better I can project. But as far as where the general fund is now, where it will be at the end of this year and next year, and what
that would be helpful. That would probably be helpful just to see that.
The options that will leave open to the board after that, I can do that. Because those are pretty much knowable.
Okay.
So yeah, I can do that.
Thank you. I know I can speak only for myself, but when I look at the numbers, and when I try to figure out what the fund balance is, it's hard for me to actually see, well, the general fund balance is this, and then there's the capital back, and then this gets backfilled here. It's hard to figure it out. You did a great job, I think, putting that together recently to answer a specific question that a resident had. But I just think it would be helpful maybe to have that for the board as well.
Sure.
Yeah, something similar.
Okay.
Unless the board has a problem, you know.
No, but I
with
think
that.
we should have it before the end of the year.
Yeah, I think that
because
before you enact the
if
budget, I
you're-
think was the
If you're waiting
direction.
for the green, if we have any change in the board, we're kind of buying a pig in a poke.
Well, and I don't think it's relative to passing the I don't think it's important to passing the budget, that number, is what I'm saying. I think our budget is a very good budget for 2022.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at your next meeting then, we will have on the agenda to put the budget on the table, or get required to be on public view for 20 days before you take action. So if you put it on the table on November the 8th, you'll be able to take action at the first meeting in December.
Okay.
To adopt it.
One of the earliest times going on the table, I think. On the floor,
I
or
think
where
we-
it's going.
There was a time when it was the last meeting of the year.
Oh, yes, and at 8 o'clock in the morning, I remember
I remember that one too.
that. All right, no meeting on that Wednesday.
So we're not planning on having the meeting that's scheduled for next Wednesday, unless anyone feels there's a need to review any budget items.
Honestly, the only reason I thought you might need one was if anything that you had been presented from any of the departments you still had questions about, or, there wasn't a whole lot of discussion those evenings when the budgets were presented to you. So I didn't know if you wanted to leave that extra meeting for further discussion on anything or not. But if you're happy with the way it stands, then we could have a little bit of discussion on the 8th and then take action to put it on the table.
Yes, that works.
I asked all my relevant budget questions during the budget meetings and was satisfied, so I like the budget as is and would look forward to putting it on the table on the 8th at our next regular.
Great.
Okay. That'll be the plan. Next on our agenda is the manager. Tom?
Thank you. I have a discussion and possible action following your acceptance of Mr. McCullough's resignation earlier tonight, and following up on a conversation that we had with the board last week in executive session. I would ask the board to consider the appointment of Rebecca Davis as our acting Public Works Director effective tomorrow, because that is when Mr. McCullough.
I'd like to make that motion, Mr. President.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Shin to appoint Rebecca Davis as acting Public Works Director effective October 27th, 2021. And I have a second from Commissioner Black. Is there
I've got
any?
a question.
Yes, Commissioner Holtzman.
Why?
Yeah, he's working through tomorrow. Thanks, I know what I'm doing.
Well, I thought perhaps it was from a probation standpoint. As all employees, whenever you make a move from one thing, there's a probationary period. I don't know why it's acting other than that.
Well, it's acting because we haven't worked out details like job descriptions and
Okay.
salary yet.
Okay.
So it's really acting just to cover the gap in leadership that we would have otherwise.
Okay, so you're not looking to go out and hire somebody else and
No,
bring
it's
them
not
in
one
and
of those
replace her?
deals.
No.
Not one of
Okay.
those deals.
Does that satisfy your question,
Yep.
Commissioner?
Becky,
Mr. President, I was even
do you
more
want the
satisfied.
job? Do you want the job? Do you want the job?
Can I wait to see the job description first? Just kidding.
Good answer. Now, I thought this evening, Mr. Board members, that the way Ms. Davis handled the questions that were thrown at her and the reporting, and I'm very confident this is going to be a good deal.
We're very excited. Thank you for being a rock star already and what you've done. It's clear through excelling in your I guess now previous responsibilities that you've shown the board and the staff the leadership ability that we're so excited when this was presented to us last week. I know I, for one, was elated. I thought it just made perfect sense. So I'm thrilled you'll,
Let me never take you guys far.
You know, yeah, you know what else I thought was very interesting? What else was very interesting? I have all the respect in the world for John Eby. When the ball was tossed to John and he offered it to Becky, I think that was just right there, showed me a lot. And so congrats.
Yeah, Rebecca, you know, I think you do a great job in what you do, and I hope after you see the job description, you'll agree it's still a very good fit.
I think so. I'm excited.
Significant input into
I was going to say, what do you want to do, Becky?
So,
There's
no.
always that other duties as assigned.
Yeah.
So I have a motion and a second on the table. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Congratulations and great.
Yeah.
Yep. At this point, Commissioner reports, and after that, we'll be going into executive session. Aaron, nothing? Director Hall, Dave? Steve?
Just the for executive session on legal partners.
Oh, okay. Rebecca? Mr. Eby?
Very quickly, I want to thank you for your continued support of staff professional development. Lower Island Township directly and indirectly was complimented repeatedly at the PennBach conference. It's the state ICC chapter. The annual conference was in Reading, October 20 to 22. Rich Lehigh and I served as directors. Bill Yeagley served as president the last 3 years, an extra year because of COVID. He was instrumental in the planning of the conference, along with 3 or 4 other individuals across the state. On Friday, Director Hall and Acting Director Davis were my instructors for the morning. And in the next classroom, Bill Yeagley was instructing. The feedback was all very good. So again, I want to thank you for, encouraging us to develop professionally and then to serve in our professional associations.
Great. Director? Rick? Michelle? Wait, is this your last night? No, okay.
Good. Be here for another month.
Okay. Tom? Well, we're glad to have you as long as you can be here. Tom?
Just to remind the board that our Kirk Stoner through in conjunction with the COG has set a meeting date for a meeting with PennDOT regarding the tolling of I-83 of the I-83 bridge. The meeting will be held on November the 15th at 6 p.m. and it's going to be at the maintenance facility out in Carlisle. I know that Kirk offered them several municipal facilities. I offered our room, and they decided they wanted to be at their own facility. So if anybody is interested in attending that meeting to discuss the tolling of the I-83 bridge, again, November 15th at 6 p.m. out in Carlisle.
What's their maintenance facility, Tom?
It's on at 40 Army Heritage Drive.
Never been there.
So
Okay, November 15th, got it.
Yep.
Is that it, sir?
That's it.
Commissioner Kutz?
In the interest of time, nothing tonight.
Commissioner Shin?
I have no interest in time.
Commissioner Holt?
I have something
Ah.
I'd like to bring up. Hey, I got 5 meetings, and I'm doggone it, I'm going to make the most of them.
You go for it.
It's Mrs. Trone. I'm looking at the minutes from the authority, and I want you to know I read them. I'm assuming that you were talking about Trader Joe's when the temporary roof had been installed. I remember we were out at the site. You were talking. I was so glad to see that the roof was coming in 30 days ahead of what they thought would come in.
Yes.
Fantastic.
It'll be
Then-
there November 12th.
Then there's a comment that reads, Mrs. Trone, when asked, stated the expediential completion date is the end of November. Then there's a however. The date does change. should it say does not change? It does change.
We're still gonna be completing some items until about mid-December. The storefronts are ordered and we're having supply chain issues, so they're not gonna be coming until
So
later.
that wasn't an error of omission there, that the word
So
not.
the roof is now not the problem, it's now the front
Oh.
of the building.
Okay.
They're windows, basically, they call them storefronts, but they're windows, so now they'll be coming in. The good news is that we worked with Trader Joe's, and we'll be putting on like temporary covering there too, so they can still get in. They're still going to pour their floor, they can still do their work, so we're proceeding with the schedule, but we'll still be on site probably till about the end of the year.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm finished.
Thank you. Are you sure?
I am for now.
Take as much time as you want, sir. Commissioner Holtzman.
Yes, we're back to Rossman Road. Who do we see about that? What are we doing about that with the lights up there that we need lighting up there by the school?
I was gonna bring the same thing up.
We definitely need something done up there.
Who does that? Who makes that decision?
We've had a number of meetings about that already, Dave and I. Dave, you want to tell commissioners what we've discussed so far?
Sure. The managers actually drafted a letter to PennDOT, to the district executive. I've been in touch with Brett Sanders from the school district, and also their architecture engineering firm that worked on Ross Moyne has contacted me. We plan on looking at a number of options for that, for the crosswalk and for bus crossing signs. I had said that in a previous life, I had been involved in a school zone issue with PennDOT and a bus entrance issue with PennDOT, and successfully got some lights. So I think there are options. We have to explore. The first thing is it's a state road, so PennDOT's going to have to authorize whatever we do. We may have to do some traffic studies in order to complement that, or have them help us do that because they have a traffic unit that will do those things. So I just think it's a matter of reaching out to them, having some discussions, and negotiating a solution. And then the issue is going to be who pays for what and how we can fund it, because none of the options that we're looking at are necessarily inexpensive. So we'll see what can be approved, and then we'll move forward. We agree. We've had a lot of, manager and I both have had a lot of, and Brad also had calls and contacts from residents in the Fair Oaks development. So it's been an ongoing conversation, and I think we have a conceptual plan. We'll see, whether or not we can enlist PennDOT's aid in making it happen.
Were there ever lights on Ross Moyne Road?
There was.
What kind of lights?
I don't know.
There was previously a school zone, so there were lights associated with the school zone. But as a part of the construction project, and we're trying to trace down how exactly that happened, but PennDOT declared that a dangerous roadway and would not allow it to be a school zone anymore, actually required the signs to be removed. And that's when the school district had to bus students from Fair Oaks to the school when it was built.
We actually had sent them a letter.
Yes.
At the time, asking them to allow us to keep.
To allow us to put them in.
To keep the flashers there. And they declined.
Yes.
And we had to remove them by a certain
Oh, I remember. I mean,
so yeah, there were school sign flashers there. What we're talking about doing now is kind of three phases. One, we want to put up advanced signs of the pedestrian crosswalk. It is signed at the crosswalk. We want to put up some advanced signs. That should be fairly simple to get PennDOT to allow us to do that. Secondarily, we want to put in the bus crossing flashers that Director Hall was referring to. Thirdly, we would like to find some funding to put in our RFBs at that crosswalk, like we're doing this year at Lower Allen Elementary.
It makes no sense. I mean, they bus the kids across the road, but what about the kid that misses the bus?
Well,
they're going to walk.
They're going to walk.
I mean, it's
or
plain
the
and
parents,
simple.
or the parents are going to drive them.
And yeah.
I mean, that's stupid.
Is that it, We'll put Carolyn on PennDOT. Is that it, Commissioner?
That's it.
Commissioner Black?
I don't want to extend this. I have nothing.
Okay.
Chicken.
So,
He went to play with puppy.
first of all, I would just like to say thanks to staff and the board for getting this budget done. It was excellent. I know the staff puts in a lot of time ahead of the board seeing these budgets. I believe that the board's taken action over the last couple of years to make things, I won't even say easier, but more efficient with how the township budgets. And so that's great. And kudos to everybody here for rolling that out so that we can be at a place right now where we're looking at putting a budget on the table at our second meeting in November. Or yeah, that would be the first meeting in November. So that's just terrific that we've come to that point. And the budget's really good this year. So thank you to staff for putting all that together. When I bring up the fund balance, and please accept this, it is not at all in an aggressive way. You know my personality. I'm all about making sure as much communication is out there, and I do sense, at the very minimum, from the public and my experience, and perhaps from some commissioners, as I have discussions, that we don't fully understand how we come to some of the numbers. So anytime we can keep revisiting that, it's no fault of staff, because I believe staff's doing everything possible to make sure everything's out there. But I think that as often as we can have everybody understanding the bigger picture of things, it's better for everybody. So I appreciate that if it's not a lot of work to do, that we have something before the end of the year that we can look at, as far as the fund balance, like a model, I appreciate that. We did, and I was going to bring up the Ross Moyne school thing. I was really upset this weekend because I took calls from a few residents, two in particular, that were just really upset, and they're tying a bunch of things together. And all I had to say was all I had to offer was my recollection that we did try to have lights there. And I remember directing Tom, the board directed Tom, to send a letter to PennDOT to see if I guess it was, if I remember correctly, at our own expense, to actually do that. And now here we are, a tragic accident, in a situation where the school's built, and now 8.1, which wasn't on the radar really, it was on the radar for internally, but 8.1 of Arcona is being built. And do we really think that all of those residents that are now going to connect over to there from the rest of Arcona and 8.1 aren't going to be walking around? And those folks are going to, whether we have sidewalks there or not, they're going to walk up Ross Moyne Road. People are going to be doing that more often. And the one resident that contacted me this weekend was really upset. And he was upset because he knows that there's more people going faster. And I know, we have the radar and all of that, and our police are doing what they can, but that's not in our control. People are going faster on the roads, and there's going to be more pedestrian traffic, whether we have sidewalks and connectivity ready to go or not. And so I think the school district should really pay attention to this, and PennDOT. I mean, now PennDOT they have to see that there was a terrible accident. So I'm just venting a little bit because it's very frustrating, because I think that, I'm not saying what we would have done would have prevented it, but we sure tried, and we went outside the box to try to get PennDOT's attention on this, and it's a shame, in my opinion, that
Didn't we have the same situation in Highland Park a few years back?
Yes, that was a student, a student on trick or treat night across from Highland Elementary School.
So that's all I have. Before I recess to executive session, is there anything else that anybody would like to bring up this evening or talk about?
Mr. President, on that same vein, I'm just curious if Director or Manager thinks it would be helpful for the commissioners to sign a letter to PennDOT imploring them to consider these as a safety issue, and given the recent tragedy.
It may be. What I heard from Tom, was that he might consider.
The letter's already gone out.
Oh, it did,
It's already
okay.
gone out today.
Yeah, so,
I think it's premature to have the commissioners intercede. Let's see
Okay.
what PennDOT's response is.
Understood.
yeah.
Thank you.
So, and, thanks. Captains, not to exclude you, thank you for your patience.
Guys, and that makes a great picture.
We have two executive session items that in a second here we're going to recess for. We have a discussion on the Regal Partners. This is the Country Inn and Suites tax appeal settlement and the expiring terms on the boards and commissions. So I reset. Oh, I'm told we don't have any action coming out of executive commission or executive session. I'm getting tired. This evening. So I'll adjourn this Board of Commissioners meeting. Thank you, everybody.